Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Through this podcast, we will be introducing you to some of the leaders and legends in our village. We'll keep you updated about fascinating local events. We'll dig into the town's hot topics and so much more. But first, let me introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Johnson, the founder of Ridgewood Talks and Ridgewood Walks. The goal of these initiatives is to create a kinder, more connected, and more vibrant community. I'm thrilled to be hosting this podcast with my good friend and all-around wonderful guy, Jordan Kaufman. We look forward to meeting with you weekly and hearing your thoughts on who and what you'd like to learn about in our beautiful hometown. For now, be kind, do good, and enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hi, listeners. Welcome to Ridgewood Talks. Our little hyper-local podcast is dedicated to discussing issues that impact the residents of Ridgewood. One of the most popular aspects of our show is our interviews with political candidates, and this year's election is especially important. While national politics often grab our attention, it's crucial to remember how local elections shape our daily lives, and that's why Ridgewood Talks is sitting down with candidates running for our Village Council and Board of Education. We extended an invitation to every candidate to share their platform with you, our listeners, and everyone accepted except Village Council candidate Hungju Kwak. We reached out to her through her Board of Education email, the 2 emails listed on her website, and her social media platforms, and we received no response. The questions we're asking the candidates came directly from you, our audience, and the candidates did not receive the questions in advance. So, without further ado, let's welcome today's guest, Frank Mortimer. Frank has degrees in communication and psychology from St. Louis University. He is a marketing executive in higher education and an adjunct instructor at Cornell University. And he also owns his own company. Frank's Honey. He's married, has 3 children, and has been a resident of Ridgewood for nearly 14 years. Frank is a certified master beekeeper and the author of Bee People and the Bugs They Love. It's a well-received book on beekeeping and was mentioned in the New York Times Book Review, and also Martha Stewart has given it high praise. In addition to his professional roles, Frank serves as vice chair of Ridgewood's Parks and Recreation and Conservation Board and is a member of the Green Ridgewood Committee. His focus on environmental sustainability is evident in his support for initiatives like No Slow Mow May, aimed at reducing lawn mowing to support pollinators. Frank was also the champion behind the certification of Ridgewood as New Jersey's first Bee City USA. Full disclosure, Frank and I have served on the West Village of Ridgewood Oktoberfest Steering Committee for 5 years. So Frank, let's kick this off. First of all, how can people learn more about you?
Well, and Jeannie, thank you for having me on the show. I'm a huge fan of the show and have listened to multiple episodes, and I really appreciate all the work that you do informing our residents and hosting the show. So thank you. People can find me on Facebook or on the web by just going to Mortimer for Council. So you can, if you're in Facebook, just look for Mortimer for Council, and online, just put in mortimerforcouncil.com and you'll find everything you need to know.
All right, great. So again, I just want to remind our listeners that these questions were formulated by our audience. This first question is, Ridgewood has so many committees, boards, and groups. Tell us about all the different places you volunteered for Ridgewood.
Thanks. This is a great question because that's why I think I am a great candidate for council, is because I have served in so many different capacities in Ridgewood. And I do that because I've lived in a lot of different towns, and Ridgewood's really the first place I've lived that feels like home. And because of that, I want to give back. It's like you mentioned Bee City USA, and that we were the first certified city in New Jersey. And what Bee City is about, educate the public about the importance of pollinators and having natural yards. When I started that, I had to go around and talk to everybody from Parks and Rec to the Green Team to the Conservancy and Wildscape. So I got to know all the different committees. And then that led me to joining Parks and Rec, which I've been on for almost 6 years. and then Green Ridgewood, which you mentioned. And Green Ridgewood is awesome because they advise the council on different environmental initiatives that we can take to help our town. And I'm especially proud of that this spring we brought in graduate students from Columbia University. Their senior project was Ridgewood. And so they developed ideas and plans for how to mitigate the flooding, as well as how we can reduce our carbon footprint. And then, yeah, like you said, the Oktoberfest Steering Committee, which is, my one of my two favorite events here in town. Great for families to come out and have a great time, and everyone's just so happy, and that's what I love about it. And then finally, I'm a member of the Ridgewood Guild because I believe in the mission of helping and revitalizing businesses in Ridgewood because that's what we need. And so, yeah, and last, I guess I should say too, is that I've given talks at 4 of the elementary schools, including Ridge, Travell, Willard, and Somerville, talking about the importance of bees to the kids. Because I think if you teach them early, then as they grow up, that they're more conscious of the importance of nature.
What is the one local issue that no one has spoken publicly about that you want to address?
I think the public is going to be talking about this, but that's the town garage that the village just purchased a few weeks ago. The one that's on Franklin Ave, that's been an eyesore for a couple of decades. And I think that property is going to be an important part of how we revitalize and visualize what our downtown should be in the future. And so they're going to tear down that building, and then the owner is required to pay for all the remediation that has to happen so it gets up to code and is environmentally safe. And once that's happened, that what I think that we need to do is we need to engage urban planners to really get expert advice on how we can extend our downtown, maintaining some sort of green there, but also just making sure that in this era of online shopping, we're the Amazon generation, and we have to figure out what local brick and mortar stores and restaurants can do to bring in customers. And so we have a really unique opportunity with that big corner, which, because the village also owns the parking lots that are by that. How can we best utilize that for the downtown, and not just today, but in the future? So that's something that I'm really looking forward to, if elected, that I can help be part of the vision of what our downtown can become in the future.
That's great. Do you have anything in your mind that you would like to see built there?
It's a good question. And what I want to bring to the council is I want to rely on data and experts, because I think that where things can get off track is if you put your opinion first. And since I don't have any data, I'd rather approach it with an open mind and hear what the experts that are trained and went to school on what to do in downtowns, urban planners, and find out what they suggest. Because I think that it's important in everything making decisions is to use data. And I want to get that data before I would form an opinion.
You mentioned that you want to revitalize the central business district. So with that, what's the most pressing issue facing the Village of Ridgewood, in your opinion?
The most important, because I think it affects so many residents, is flooding. And what's really good is that our current village manager, Keith Kasmark, is the first person in Ridgewood who's contacted the Army Corps of Engineers to start that long process of what can we do? Because the issue is with flooding, there's no easy fix. And if anybody says, hey, you just do this one thing and we're all good, that's not true. And so you have to look at beyond our borders and look upstream and downstream. That'll solve it. But I think that with the climate crisis and how we're getting more 100+ year floods in a short period of time, we had 3 floods in 4 months last year and the beginning of this year. So looking at that, we need to figure out a way to resolve it. Additionally, what are some short-term things that we could do that would help mitigate it? And I think that those need to be also looked into and enacted. Like, we can't just look, we have to do. There's a new initiative that the Shade Tree Commission in Green Ridgewood has started just yesterday, which is rain barrels. That if we can get 100 or more homes to put rain barrels in, then that can mitigate storm runoff, which then impacts flooding. And so we do some of the low-hanging fruit like that right away, but then look at some short and medium-term things, which is keeping the brooks and rivers clear of debris. So then that way the water can flow a little bit more freer, and we don't have that instant flooding whenever we have a rain. But I would say that because the number of residents and residential neighborhoods and residents themselves that are affected by flooding, not to mention our fields and our village property that gets impacted by flooding, that's why I think that that's the number one thing that we have to deal with.
I think that's a really good idea.
You can just, Jeannie, anybody can just go to Backyard Living, and that's who's selling the rain barrels for us. And for Ridgewood residents, if you use the code Green Ridgewood, you can save $25 off your purchase.
This person wants to know about your thoughts on a more modern design for the band shell. Has there been any talk about refurbishing the band shell?
That I know that there is a committee that is specific to the band shell. I'm not on that committee and I haven't attended the meeting, so I wouldn't be able to answer that one. But I will say one of the great things that the village is doing now is that we have a grant writing firm that seeks out, like they hunt for different grants that Ridgewood is eligible for, and that's why we're able to maximize so many things that we're doing, keeping the cost to residents minimal to none. So I'm a big fan of that and think that we should continue to look for those.
So a lot of people have been concerned about the movie theater and what is going to happen there. So do you know anything about it becoming a performing arts center?
This I can answer that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Guild held a meeting in town hall about it, and we had a fantastic turnout. It was actually more than expected. And what they presented was what the plans are. Tony has been in touch with the owners because the thing to remember about the movie theater is it is privately owned. However, they are very receptive to turning it into a performing arts center. And the next step was to develop a committee that so then that way we could create a 501c not-for-profit. So then that way we could start pursuing what it would take and how much money it would take to turn that into a performing arts center. So the great news is from this meeting that I believe it was 15 people signed up to be on the board. So that is moving. So all indications are that it will become a performing arts center that can be used for residents. And the Guild, like I said, is taking on. So I'm excited about that. And, as you know, that's such a great destination here in town. It'd be fantastic to have it be a performing arts center that we could all utilize.
I also heard that there was someone at that meeting from the city that suggested that it be used as a staging center for Broadway performances. Is that correct?
Somebody was in the audience who had said, yeah, that like a lot of times that the way that those plays get started is they go to a smaller theater so they can practice and refine it and then move forward to Broadway. And since Ridgewood's proximity to New York would make it a great location for that. So there was some discussion about that. And what that would be too is the size of the Performing Arts Center, because it's a big space in there because they took down all the walls and everything inside from what I'm told. And so the question is, do you make it like a 400 seat theater or do you make it smaller? And so for the Broadway, he actually said smaller would be better.
An interesting take. And if we do move forward with that plan, it certainly would bring in foot traffic into the central business district, which we need to keep our businesses afloat. So on that note, I have to be full disclosure on this. This particular question, it says, has the village looked into getting a public art program? This person said, I thought I saw that there was a very nice looking improvement project for the train station tunnel and the underpass area. And so would you like to start on that? And then I can add comments to that.
I know that there was a fantastic presentation made to the village council about a week.
Go on.
Which I am fully in favor of because so many people go through that tunnel. It would be fantastic to have the mural there, especially with the mosaic tiles. So there is a plan, as you well know, Jeannie, and I'll be quiet so you can fill in the details. But it's a awesome ideas on how to beautify our downtown even more and for a lasting for decades. So I'll turn over to you so you can let the audience in on what we're talking about.
Yeah. So starting in October of 2020, I had gone to the engineering department and I said, listen, we got to get this pedestrian tunnels cleaned up because, we got to get some foot traffic over to the west side of town. And so we started this project, and, as things go, it's like, if anyone's ever read that book, if you give a pig a pancake, it's just one thing turns into the next thing, turns into the next thing. So what we decided to do is to have a architectural firm come in who's affiliated with the State Historic Preservation Office, because it turns out the tunnel is a historic landmark. So we had to, before we could do anything, we had to get approvals from them. And then we found that there were some minor structural things that needed to be repaired. And as the bureaucratic wheel turns very slowly, these improvements are going to go into the year of 2027. There's reasons behind all of it that I won't get into, but they are solid reasons. And so the tunnel will be refurbished. It will be repaired. The skylights will be cleaned up. We're going to get some better lighting down there. We're going to put security cameras down there, and we're going to do a very extensive art initiative down there. Because that project has taken on a whole new life, I thought, well, we need to get some public art in our community, because we really need to have some foot traffic here. And so one of the things that I proposed to the Village Council was to have a sidewalk hall of fame. There are a lot of very famous people here in Ridgewood or from Ridgewood and the surrounding areas. And I thought it would be really cool to highlight them on our sidewalks, and that would bring foot traffic here. And foot traffic brings revenue. We know that pedestrians spend 3 times more money in our stores than do motorists, because motorists will make an appointment to go into a business, where pedestrians wander and they spend a lot more money. So that's what we want to do. We want to entice people to come and see our beautiful village and really truly make it a destination. So that is underway. I am working right now on the pilot project, on the pilot tile, I should say. We're going to put that in front of the clock, and hopefully it will be installed before the snow falls, because that's what we need to understand, is how will these tiles withstand the snow and the salt and the shoveling and the plowing. So that's what we're trying to get installed very quickly, hopefully by the end of this month. And then we have another project that we want to put in place. Well, first of all, let me just back up for 1 minute and say that we want everyone to be involved in this. We need a jury of artists that will decide what is going to be put in the tunnel, what kind of artwork we want there, what kind of artwork we want in our sidewalks. And then we're going to do another project underneath the train trestle, and that will be a painted mural. The thing that I like the most about that is Rossi Paint Stores of Ridgewood, Benjamin Moore. They are donating the paint for these murals. So I am ecstatic about that. So a big project is underway. We need people involved that want to help us, again, declare the images that we are going to put up. And we also need a fundraising team. So if anyone is interested in getting involved in this, please contact me here at ridgewoodtalks@gmail.com, or you can write to the Ridgewood Mural Project at gmail.com. We want all hands on deck. And the final phase of this is going to be a wall of honor. The final phase will be a wall of honor to recognize the people who have donated money to this and who have put forth effort into the beautification of our community and all these public art projects. I must give a shout out to the Ridgewood Arts Foundation, because without them, none of this could happen. So that is pretty exciting. I'm just going to say that.
And what's really exciting about that, Jeannie, is that, and this is what makes Ridgewood such an awesome place to live, is that we have people like you in town that are spearheading these great initiatives that are going to make our town better. And it's involving so many of our other residents. And that, and it's interesting, hearing people from other towns come here and they see the involvement that our community has in making our village the best place to live. And so I really applaud you for all the work that you're doing. And when this is done, our town's going to look even better.
Thanks. You know what I'm particularly excited about, and I think our listeners should be excited about this too. Our new village manager, Keith Kasmark, has a degree in art history, and this is his passion. It is a passion project for him. So his support has been unbelievable. So Now we've talked about all the prettiness of the town. Let's talk about some other nuts and bolts issues like parking. We have a very aggressive parking attendant right now, and I'd like you to expound on whether or not the revenues have increased so much to make those efforts worthwhile. Let's talk about parking.
And Jeannie, I'm a candidate, so I'm not privy to what the revenue is or what they're bringing in. I mean, I'm happy to give my advice. I mean, some of these questions I think are asking for people that are the candidates that have this information. So I'm happy to give my opinion at this point.
I understand that. We're going to move on to some issues that I will say this. Again, we put this out to our listeners and we asked them to send in their questions. And the most popular, I lost count of how many people sent in a question that was formulated similar to this one. So it seems to be a very, very important issue. The question is, how do you define respectful campaigning, and what steps are you taking to hold yourself accountable for maintaining integrity through the campaign?
What a great question. And I appreciate that you included this in the podcast for me and the other candidates as well. And I think everything starts at home. And I think that with respecting other people is you have to make sure you respect your family, then everyone in your family is respecting everybody in the village and elsewhere. I think as far as the campaign goes, I have focused specifically on topics at hand, and I think that that's the number one way to do it. And for those that know me, I'm a very positive person. That's just how I'm wired. I'm the optimist. And so I believe like it outside of the campaign, like the campaign is a short period of time. And so in general, when dealing with people, it's always about showing them respect and looking for the good in people. I think that unfortunately that there's been, and not in Ridgewood, I'm talking across the nation, there's too many negative politics that have taken over of how people think that they have to run their campaigns. And what I believe, and I think that people in Ridgewood, most people believe too, is that nasty social media posts and nasty blogs are not what defines Ridgewood, and they should not define who we are as people. So I think the best thing to do is move away from those, meaning that let's focus on good. If you visit or respond or even read any of those nasty things that are out there, that just perpetuates it. And I think that what every person can do is just say, you know what, I need to talk to them in person. Because if you look at what's happened in our society is that we've become more isolated because we're communicating through social media. And you look at like just civic groups and groups in general of how their membership has declined over the years because people are finding information and spending too much time online. So I think that part of being a socially responsible person is to get out in public and meet people, because the more you meet somebody face to face, the more you're going to find commonalities between you, as opposed to look for differences or try to draw sides. And I just really believe that, Ridgewood is such a great community, and there's so many fantastic people that live here that we can come together and just focus on the good. And as a group and as an individual, we can put forward positive messages.
I think you said it well. I think you said it best. To tag on to that, my question then is, Ridgewood prides itself on a strong sense of community. And after the election, win or lose, how will you work to build relationships within the community?
Another great question. And I believe that the way to do that is by focusing on the positive. I mean, there's so many good people in town, and they're not the ones who they should have the voice, but they're not necessarily the ones that get the voice. And so I think as an elected official is to call out and sing the praises of of people that are doing great work and let the community see that. Because I think that when there's positive messages going out, then people are more receptive to joining the committees, to being part of public service, and that more of the community would feel safe and inspired to also pitch in. Because what's going to keep our community as great as it is we got to continue to have all of these different boards and committees filled with people that are inspired to do good for our village. And the way to get people to do that is by, again, positive messages and just letting other people know.
So with that, Frank, tell us, who are some of the leaders that you respect and why?
That's a good question, Jeannie. I draw from leadership. I loved Steve Jobs. I think you look at what he did and then just how he basically changed how we live. And I think that he was an inspirational leader. I look also to academics. You look at Einstein and how not just his physics, but how he contributed to a lot of positive community beliefs. I also would say Ben Franklin is a great one, like especially when you read his autobiography or some of the other stuff like that he's done or thought, and just like what an entrepreneurial and what a funny guy he was. Like that's the thing with Ben Franklin is he was funny and he was super smart. And then I think I read a lot, so a lot of people in literature I like, and just like James Joyce is a good example who did Ulysses and just how he wanted to write a book that would be what he considered the best that would ever be. And you look for inspiration in different scenarios and across the world as well. And then I would say, like, I am a beekeeper. So there is a researcher named Tom Seeley, who's considered one of the best researchers for honeybees in the world. What I really admire about him is how he thought up a lot of the studies that he did, like to set up the experiments and just like the thought power that went in behind that.
Our last question is, why are you running for a seat on the village council?
Great question. What I think that makes me unique is that I started, I'll call it at the bottom. Like by doing the Bee City, I first had to go out and talk to these different boards and committees. Then I joined them and have interfaced with them throughout the years. And so I see what most people may not realize is that the village council, it's a working council. So they have to also be part of boards and committees in the town and keep everything moving. And this is all volunteers. Like that's the other thing too. So for me, like having kind of worked in different capacities, I'll call it behind the scenes in some cases to try to help better our town, that I see that joining the village council is the next step for me. And I'm excited to do that. And I feel that my experience of being active in our civic community since 2017 has given me the experience necessary to see it. And, I attend village council meetings I have for over the last several years. So I understand the process, I understand the need, and I just really want to give back. And I think it goes to what I said at the beginning, that I've lived in a lot of different towns in my life. And when I came to Ridgewood, it was the first place that felt like home. And because it just is so accepting and I feel like my place is here, my family loves it here. And because it's such a great place to be, I want to give back to it. And the best way for me to give back to it is by being on the village council.
Great, Frank. Thank you. And tell us again how we can find you.
Yeah, look for Mortimer for Council. So if you're on Facebook, just put in the search bar Mortimer for Council, and then also on the web, mortimerforcouncil.com.
Excellent. Thanks again, Frank, for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you all the best for your campaign.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. And again, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I wish you all the best. Have a great day.
Thank you.